I'm Paul Sullivan, your host on the Company of Dads podcast, where we explore the sweet, sublime, strange, and silly aspects of being a lead dad in a world where men, who are the primary parents, often feel they have to hide or at least not talk about their roles. One thing I know from personal experience is being a lead dad is not a traditional role for men, whether you work full-time, part-time, or devote all your time to your family. Parenting is so often left to mothers or paid caregivers. But here at the Company of Dads, our goal is to shake all that off and create a community for fathers who are lead dads and to welcome other dads who want to learn from us. Today, I'm talking to Andrew Jensen. Andrew is a professional golfer, early golf YouTube creator, and relatively new lead dad with a year-old son and his wife, Kelly. Andrew and I met, as lead dads often do, on a Monday at a golf course. First rule of lead dadding, forget weekend recreational activities for yourself. I was drawn to Andrew because he was remarkably open, but not just about the pluses of being a lead dad, but also about some of the struggles that this still non-traditional role present for us. Andrew, welcome to the Company of Dads podcast.
Paul, thanks for having me. This is cool.
All right. You grew up in Canada. You live in Florida now, outside of Jacksonville. Talk to me a bit about your childhood and your own dad.
Well, I grew up, it's funny, this framing of lead dad, like I couldn't use a better term to kind of describe my dad, but ironically enough, like he wasn't around very much. My dad was a club pro. My dad was a head pro in Ottawa. And even though our stereotypically season of golf is short, my dad's
What's it like?
job,
Like 3.5 weeks in Canada? Is that what it is?
Ooh, if that, yeah. if you're willing for a week in the snow, for sure. But yeah, like our season in Ottawa, granted, we get a lot more snow than Toronto would. Our season would be pretty comfortably from early April through October. Mm-hmm. You could play golf, but my dad's job would be early March through November, because you have kind of, at the time, the older system was the head pro was in charge of everything. It wasn't just a paid position like a director of golf is. Like my dad had the back shop, the pro shop, the driving range, the carts. Like he had to kind of prepare everything for the season, but then also kind of break everything down for the winter. And back
then, like there's also the financial risk. I remember growing up, I mean, like the head pro, he got a bigger cut of, shirts and hats or whatever sold at the pro shop, but he was also on the line because he bought that inventory himself.
Exactly. And the same thing with like when my dad bought all the carts, and if a cart breaks down, it's not the club that has to do it. He had to. And same thing with the driving range. He's buying the golf balls. He's maintaining that. And my dad was a great businessman. He kind of had everything paid off in a couple of years, basically. And I mean, he took the job as the head pro the year I was born. So he was an assistant from 78 to 84. And then 84 to 2000, he was the head pro. And my dad is 84 years old. So my dad retired at 62. Like my dad still kind of went, and he's been delivering pizzas for the last 20 years already. So it's like one of those things where he was just a worker. He just grew up homeless in Montreal in a time from Danish immigrants and alcoholic parents. Like my dad is from an era where you don't talk about love, emotions, feelings, those things. You show it. And being proud of your kids as a father, you show that. You don't need to tell your kids that. So I mean, my dad was my hero, and my dad's the reason I got into golf, but I kind of connected the dots very early that if I wanted to spend time with my dad, I should play golf. Right. My dad didn't push golf on me. Obviously, I had the access, but even as I progressed through junior golf and was showing a lot of ability and talent, my dad wasn't like, here's a new set of clubs every year. Here's a new pair. Like my dad was like, I had junior set of clubs. I had a half set of clubs until I played my first tournament. Right. And then I used my mom's old club. Like my dad was very much, you earn your stuff. Whereas a lot of peers, especially with club pro dads, the new driver comes out every year. It's like, you've got that because they want to give you that opportunity. And my dad was like, you need to prove it. You need to show that you want this. Like nothing is kind of a handout.
Well, show that you were serious. Show that you weren't just doing it because your dad could get you a brand new, Titleist driver, TaylorMade driver every year.
Exactly. Because I mean, even for him, right? Like he had an equipment contract with whatever company at the time for a few years at the club, and then it wasn't just like, oh, dad signed on with Ping, therefore I'm getting all new Ping kind of stuff. And even golf balls, it wasn't like, I was using old beat up golf balls. Like it was, you earned it. The only kind of silver spoon I had was the access to the golf course. Like, we would go out, my dad would drive me out when he goes and opens the shop at sunrise, would drop me off on the 10th tee. I'd play the back nine. So it's like kind of sneak around a little bit because there was restrictions for juniors. And then it would be chip and putt, hit balls for all day. And then till juniors can play at 4 o'clock and then go home with dad at the end of the day. So it's like, I'd be at the golf club as long as he worked when I was 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And then I started working there at 12 because I had to pay for my membership.
Right.
But that was the deal.
And you could see him. That was great because he's, you know, I
Yeah.
always say, you talk about show, don't tell. And that's such a motto of mine, but you were able to sort of see like, okay, this is how hard my dad works. This is what my dad is doing. This is how, but what was it like? You know, I've always wondered this because jobs like this, you know, they seem great on paper to be the head pro or the director of golf. But if you have kids, they are, you know, immensely time consuming in the time when kids are around. What was it like with your dad from, say, you know, November to March,
like
when
the 3 months that I got him?
Yeah.
I mean, it was okay because granted, it was being in Canada, like golf was done. It was winter. It was hockey time. So we watched a lot of hockey together. Yeah. We would, you know, play road hockey, shoot pucks around. But again, my dad's age, he wasn't by any stretch old at the time, but he had me at 46. So when he's 56, 57, 58 years old, he's not running around with me and doing all of the activities with me like my friends would be doing or their dads would be doing. Because also my dad wasn't one to kind of spend frivolously because he grew up homeless. He always had this fear of going back to that. So yeah, I got to spend time with him. Like, we had season tickets to the Senators. I was never a Sens fan, but I was a Canucks fan, and we'd always get the Canucks game. And we just, you know, he'd buy me hockey cards. But I spent a lot of time with my dad at the pub, at the bar, basically. Not because my dad was a drunk, but like, that's where he would decompress after a day on the golf course. So I would go with him. And then in the wintertime, it's like, I'd be in there looking through my hockey cards. We'd be watching hockey, eating my chicken fingers. He's having his Guinness, you know, and it's just like, that was my time with my dad. Because when I think at home, I can't really have many vivid memories about like things I did at home with my dad. My memories are sitting at the bar, at the pub in the small town we grew up in. And then my memories are the month of March, we would come down to Florida for about 3 to 4 weeks. We'd go to Daytona Beach and we'd golf as a family. And then eventually my sister didn't care. And then sometimes it was just dad and I. So those are like my distinct memories, because at the golf course, I would see my dad. I wouldn't be able to spend time with my dad because he was so busy. And also we had to be on our best behavior there. So then it was like, you know, even going into his office was a bit taboo because he's working. And if someone's coming in, if an assistant or a member or whatever, and your kid's just hanging out there, he was always concerned about how that reflected. And this was kind of the beginning of my issues, the beginning of my downfall, if you will, was my dad said something to my sister and I often, because we both worked in the back shop. We played golf there, and his 2 boys from his first marriage that are 60 now, like they could be my dad. They did the same thing. Yeah. They're great golfers, but he said, everything you do here reflects me. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure for a kid. Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense, but that's too much of a mantle to put on a kid
on a 12-year-old kid.
Then a teenager then a teenager, because every 12, 13-year-old out there fluffs the ball in the rough. Oh, that was good. Everyone cheats at that age, right? Like, it's just like you're learning. But anything I did like that, a member would then tell my dad, and then I'd deal with it at home. If I wasn't good when we went and played a tournament, the junior club, if I was a bit of a dickhead or whatever, everything got back to dad. So that kind of further reinforced everything you do reflects me. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. And especially because I was wanting to pursue golf for my life, then it becomes all this pressure on the golf course to perform, because that makes dad look good and it makes dad happy.
Yeah.
But
also, like, as a kid, brain, like, that's your time to be with your dad. You're getting you know, to be with him, but you're not really there, but you're in the same sphere as him. You're at the course together. But, you know, it's also like, you know, as you said, it's the sort of 90s, and it's not like, this is not a high watermark for people understanding working parents. It's okay, you know, you're there, he's there to work, and you're there. And if you're asking your dad, probably, I'm sure I can imagine this, like something simple, like, hey, dad, can I go get a whatever, a hamburger or something like that?
Yeah.
And there's a member there. Well, who comes first? The member,
Yeah,
these, yeah.
for sure.
When you said you always wanted to be a pro golfer.
Yeah.
Tell me about sort of, the early experience, and I don't want to play, psychologist here, but how much of that, from what you're saying, like everything you do reflects back on your dad. How much of that did you carry with you when you turned professional?
Well, it just, continued, because essentially that notion of what I'm doing isn't intrinsically motivated. It was extrinsically motivated. Beforehand, it was because when I played bad, that's when dad and I would talk. When you play good, it's pat on the back, keep it going. But when you play bad, it's like, let's dissect it. So then when you're 16 years old, 17 years old, playing for a golf scholarship, playing for all these opportunities, and you're playing bad, you begin to think how we're going to talk about this. So now you're so far from just playing golf.
Right.
And even the summer I was 15, I didn't play any tournaments because I just couldn't do it. I just hated it. My mom would drive me to the tournament, and like, I would be like, I don't want to play. It's too much for me. And then when I turned pro, that kind of jumped to my sponsors now. Right. Like, I'm trying to impress my sponsors. I'm trying to keep my status so that they'll keep sponsoring me. And then it created a bit of a divide in our entire family, and my dad and I in particular, and between my mom and dad, because my dad was still home in Ottawa and I'm on the road, and my dad is a member now at this place where these people are sponsoring me. And he was trying to be like the liaison, almost like defending me and like the learning curve. But what he was doing was showing all my sponsors and the people that were behind me that maybe I didn't have what it took, because I was like struggling emotionally or whatever. And he came out of the road for a couple events and watched. Like one time when my brother was caddying for me, he came out, and then the first cut I made on tour, he was there, and that was super cool. But we had some big blowout arguments because I told him, like, I don't want your opinion. I don't want your support. Like, I don't want you to tell me what to do. I want you to just be my dad.
Yeah.
I want you to imagine you're an orthodontist or an accountant and you don't know anything about golf, and you're just encouraging me, not trying to help me.
Yeah.
Because I'm figuring this out. And in all due respect, you don't know this. Like, my dad was a great club player, played a lot of Canadian senior champion. Like, he was a good tournament golfer, but he didn't do the full-time tournament thing.
Right.
He still did tournament golf while having a full-time income and all the pressures back home. He didn't do just this and this living on the road. I mean, yes, he was in the military. He understood that bit, but so, yeah. And it broke his heart, man. It broke his heart when I told him those things. And then years later, it even further broke his heart when he found out how much debt I was in from 3-4 years of struggling to find sponsors, to play tournaments, all that kind of stuff. So, it was a pretty contentious time between him and I, in the early parts of my career, and then between my mom and dad, because my mom was wanting to support, and they almost got a divorce when on my first year on tour. And this is 23 years of marriage, and they just couldn't communicate because it was like they didn't know how to support me out there, where they were doing it differently, and they didn't know, and they each disagreed with how the other person was doing it. And then it just caused, I guess, so many fights at home. And I had no idea. I'm on the road for 8 months. I had no idea. Yeah, it was tough. It was very, very tough. And then when I found those things out, it further made things difficult for me, because my dad is and he's my hero. Like, I want to impress him. I want him to be proud of me, and all of these things. And back then, I mean, it took me trying to kill myself to realize all of these things and start that therapy, that it didn't fucking matter what I did. But I always heard it from my mom on my dad's behalf. And I needed to hear it from my dad.
Meaning your mom was telling you that it didn't matter what you did, that your dad was supportive, but your dad wasn't telling you.
He's proud of you. Yeah. So he when he would have these moments, he would have these vulnerable moments with my mom about me. He wouldn't have them with me. And he would, because he never experienced them from his dad. And he's from a generation where that's not what men do.
Yeah. They don't talk.
So I would get this information from my mom. So in my mind, I knew all of these things. I knew dad loved me. I knew he was proud of me. I knew he supported all. In my mind, I knew intellectually, I knew all of these things, but in my heart, I didn't believe it. And it literally took me trying to kill myself. And seeing him kind of come to my rescue and break down, like, dude, it's so hard for me to talk about these things now, which I love now that I'm a dad.
Right. When
Because
was
I
that though?
am,
When was that?
so that was
When was
20,
that
that was
moment?
2011, 2011 when I got, after I was hospitalized, because I tried to take my life 3 times seriously in my life, once at 16 and twice at 27. And the 2 times at 27 were about 3 weeks apart. And the second time I was hospitalized, when we got out of the hospital,
In
I said
Canada,
something.
were you
Yeah,
hospitalized?
in Ottawa. Yeah, in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And because my career was done, I was done playing. I had no money. I was flipping houses. I was injured. I had so much debt. It was my parents' basement. Like, it was just like, I hurt so much and didn't know how to manage that hurt.
Yeah.
So the only way to stop hurting was to take my life. And thankfully, through enough therapy and study and treatment and understanding this illness, I never wanted to die. I wanted to stop hurting. But in those moments, it's that. And when we got out of the hospital, he drove me home, and we get to the house and we walked in the door, and I kind of just, like, anecdotally, just to kind of break the mood. I mean, humor has always been, and sarcasm has always been something that I've leaned on. I was like, oh, fuck, the nightmare's over. And he just grabbed me and just started weeping. Mm. And I tell that story all the time when I talk. It's so easy. But then I spoke this summer, and I tell that story at the first tee, and it was the first time I've told that story as a dad. And it's just like, no disrespect to my dad, but it's everything in my being is, I don't want my son to ever not know.
Right.
Because genetically, I was afraid to even have children, because I'm afraid to pass this illness down.
Right.
Because I'm afraid to pass this illness down, and I'm afraid that they'll bury me by my own hands. Those are my 2 biggest things. But with each day, you kind of, it is what it is. But now it's like, I never want my son to guess. To guess where I am, how I feel about him. So it's just like one of those things. And so when I relive that moment and talk about that moment, I'm so lucky, I'm so fortunate that my dad and I have such a close relationship. And now he's even seen me as a dad, but then it makes me like, man, there's so many great things he did that I want to emulate and pass on to Jude, and that I try to emulate in my life. But there's a few things that they weren't his strengths. And I want those to be my strengths as a father.
Yeah. You're 38 now, 38, 39?
38. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said, you never wanted to be a dad, but you and I have talked.
Well, I did.
No, I know. But we're worried.
For a long time.
When I hear you, as I'm a dad of 3 kids. I've got 13 years on you, dad wise, with my oldest. But I hear in your voice the love, and you talk about Jude and how you want to be. He's only one, but you want to be there. You don't want to miss it. What was the moment where you said, okay, I'm going to do this. I want to be dad. I'm confident I can do this. I know, you said you're fearful of passing on this illness, but you said, you know what? Yeah, obviously love of Kelly, but what was it that got you to that point?
Well, I mean, it's been a process, because when I started treatment back in 2011, started going through therapy, and I didn't really start dating until 2013. It took me a couple of years to kind of start feeling comfortable to open myself up to someone, be like, hey, this is me. There's my CV. I've tried to kill myself a few times, want a date, And my therapist, I started dating a girl down in St. Petersburg, Florida. And I had a long time where I didn't talk to my therapist. And then it was like, I moved here to Jacksonville after we broke up, and I started doing some Skype with my therapist back in Ottawa, because I was struggling. And I kind of said, I said to him, I'm like, but she reopened in me this notion of having kids and being a father. And he's like, she didn't do that. It's like time, and you did that, like time and your own work, because I love kids. My sister has 5 kids. I love being an uncle to them. I've always been great with kids. And that's one of the things, like when Kelly first met me and all of her nephews, she saw me with them, and she's like,
yeah,
ooh, this guy. Because I've always
it's still my beating heart.
I know, I've always gravitated, because I'm a kid, basically, because I'm not afraid to go lay on the ground at 35, 36, fucking 50, probably, on the ground, and just roll around with a 1-year-old in the dirt. Like, I don't know. There's something about me that I love to do that. And it just, even when Kelly and I were together, since we've been together and talked about those things, I still had the fear. But then it's just time and
Yeah.
trust and time. And this illness it's a blessing and a curse, because it forces you to be incredibly self-aware, which can be very good and can be very painful at times. And just in doing that, like, believe me, when Kelly told me we were pregnant, I was not excited. And we tried, literally, it was the first time we tried, boom, one and done.
Yeah.
And it was like, I joked that I was like, man, I wished all my years of antidepressants made me sterile. You know what I mean? Like, but no, I've had a lot of fear. Even when Jude was here, I had a couple panic attacks when we first got him, when he was first born, and even the first day, because I couldn't. He was crying. Kelly was in the hospital in the bed, like she just had a C-section.
Yeah.
She couldn't do anything, and I couldn't swaddle. I couldn't do this. And I had a panic attack. And I've had a couple of times in the early months when it was like the stress and it was very, very high. And the first few months are so hard.
Mm-hmm.
I had a few panic attacks, and I was scared that I'd let him down.
Yeah.
In those moments. And I broke down. I had a couple of times where I broke down, and then my brain does go to what's next. You don't need to be here. But then I have enough practice with this that I know how to stop this. I know what to do. And obviously Kelly is my biggest support system. We're so open and vulnerable that I don't hide that shit from her. Like, I'm feeling these things. It probably sucks. I'm probably tough to be around, but yeah, a couple panic attacks that just because I was in this moment, not able to provide what my son needed.
Right. Even so something as simple as swaddling, something that you'll do hundreds and hundreds of times. Yeah.
As reheating milk the proper temperature.
Everybody fucks that up. Everybody fucks that up.
I know, but that was
bubbles
the one.
up
like
and everything. Yeah.
I got it too hot. It's not hot enough. Then it's too hot. Then it's cold. You can't use it. And I fucking threw it across the room, and I broke down because I can't provide. I can't do this. And then it was just like, to kind of take your breaks. But there was like, I don't think there was a moment where like, I'm ready for this, but there was I'm big on like small wins. And I think each small win throughout the course of this has made it easier and easier and easier to be like, I know what I'm doing and I know what I want to do. And that's like even this whole daycare stuff that we've talked about, that my process of, I put my job on complete hold, my identity, my value, my everything on complete hold.
I mean, talk about that. How did you and Kelly decide that you would be the lead dad? I know she's a recruiting manager, and but there's more flexibility today than there was 2-3 years ago. But how did you decide you were going to step up and be the lead dad?
Because I guess it's one of those things, like that's where as a Canadian, I'm very upset with the American healthcare system that women, like Kelly had a great maternity leave of 4 months. We get a year back home, even 18 months if you want it, right? And it's like, that's a lot of time for a mother to pour into their child. And it's just, there's a lot of good can come from that. I'm not saying there's no good that can come from this scenario, but the nature of my job is I'm not pursuing plane anymore. I'm not traveling in plane. So we said, when we don't want them in daycare at 4 months, so let's try 6. And luckily enough, January and February are very slow months on YouTube. So it doesn't even matter if you're making the best videos ever. Advertisement revenue's down, marketing budgets are low. So it's like, that's your time to just kind of maintain, it's not the playoffs. Like, it's just kind of the start of the season, essentially. The best time on YouTube is the end of the year, holiday season. Like, that's the time to, like, from here to the end of the year is the time to make hay. Because that's where everything ramps up. So it was like, well, I can maintain. I have a few little things planned. I can maintain this for a couple months. It's okay. We'll have someone come and help us 1 or 2 days a week so I can go to the golf course, film, practice, edit, whatever it is, for sure. And then when we went to check out our daycare, just before he was going to start at like 6.5 months, like he wasn't crawling yet. He was just kind of laying there on his back. And we went in there, and I was cool with it. I was ready. But Kelly just, it did not sit right with her. She's just like, I don't want to just put him in a room where he's just going to be like, look at all these babies. They're just laying there. Like, I don't want to do this. And it was a big kind of argument about like, you're asking me to continue to just stop everything because I have an unknown job. Like, I have set money I can make, but it also, if I stop being consistent with this,
Right.
we saw it the year that you were pregnant, because I had all my green card stuff. I had to go back to Canada, all this stuff where I had chunks where I didn't upload, and it hurt. Even the first month he was alive, like I didn't care. I'm like, I'm taking this month off. Like this is more important. But when you're not consistent on YouTube, you pay a price. And it was just like, what are you, like, you're asking me to just completely give this all up, and then almost fully knowing that when this is said and done, I might not have this job. So
Right,
then
because
it's
you're
like
one of like
I'm
the OG, golf creators on YouTube. You've
yeah.
established quite a following, but as you said,
But
that beast
I'm
needs
also
to be
so
fed.
small.
Yeah,
But I'm also now so small relative to the newer guys that are just churning it out. They're 10 times the size of me. So it's like you're competing against that now. Even though like it's like you're coming off an injury playing. You're now competing against guys that have been constantly working.
right.
So it was kind of like, well, what you're asking me to, and I would put my identity, just like when I was playing, I put my worth, my value in my golf score. And I still do to an extent with YouTube. It's my job. It's my value. Like
Mhm.
I'm not perfect. That's still something that I hold my hat on. But then, and I like, it was like, well, if we do this and I come back and it's not working, well, then I have to get a real job. Then we're really fucked, because we don't have any flexibility that if
Yeah.
Jude, like, so it was, we'll give it 6 more months. And I'm okay. And this was completely my wife's choice. And I obviously took some time to support it, and through some tough conversations. And it was like, I'll figure it out. And then just the way things shook down, we happened to sell our house and we moved. And I was spreading myself too thin for the first 3 months of these 6 months kind of thing. Cause it would be like, I'm looking at the clock to get Jude down.
Yeah.
Okay, now he's asleep. Fuck, stay asleep, because I have this, or I have to edit right now, or the sitter's coming over for 3 hours. I can go to the golf course. I can film. Don't know what I'm going to film, but I can film something.
Yeah.
I can do this. Got to rush it. And it was just like I was spreading myself so thin, burning myself out. And at the end of the day, Jude was suffering because the time I was spending with him was
You weren't
constantly looking at
you
the
weren't
clock
present. You weren't present. You
on
were
my
always
phone.
like, yeah.
Exactly. Doing emails, Instagram, comments on YouTube. Like I was working while with him. And it's like, stop. So we happened to move to a community where we have water parks. We bought a golf cart. There's so much for Jude to do. And we moved into an apartment where I don't have the garage to practice as well. And it's like, I just kind of said, like, I'm taking a sabbatical. I'm taking 3 months. I don't care. And Kelly supported this. And it was like, Jude's going to start daycare at a year. That'll give me the last 4 months of the year to go back to full time. And if there's semblance that this is salvageable, come January, we will keep this going.
Yeah.
But if not, and I'd come to grips with this, if not, I got to find something else to do. And we all as a family need to support this, because it means this flexibility we have is gone. Jude has to be in daycare. There's no pliability anymore, because if
Right.
even if I'm working from home or whatever, like I'm still, my time is not going to be so, whether I stayed in my space, whether I stayed in creative space or the golf space, like I'm not going to have the
You're not going to
ability
own
of
your
being
own time anymore. You won't own your own
exactly.
time. And even then, I think, like, just so people understand it, I mean, you've been doing this for years and years and years, but when we met at this event where you had this whole thing, mapped out. As Jim Furyk, for those who don't know golf, U.S. Open champion, great player on the Champions Tour now, sponsors a tournament in Jacksonville. And we were at this course, and you had this whole thing scripted out where you were going to go with him on the back nine, and it was going to be really interesting. And what happened? It rained, and it didn't rain. It was like a Florida thunderstorm. Get the hell off the course. And so now you have these hours that you could have worked and done something that you couldn't do. So it's like you have the job where you definitely edit at night, or you can do some stuff when he's napping, but you need that time to be on a golf course somewhere. And it may not always be in, the greater Jacksonville area. And so,
well, and even that's a great example, because we got stormed out. So now it's like this time, I looked at, thankfully I've been 3 months of kind of chilling. So my attitude was much better. Like I look back on that day and it was fucking awesome. Even though I didn't create anything, I was so happy about who I played golf with, who I connected with. And I enjoyed recreational golf, which has been a long journey for me to enjoy again. But then I have been told to do this because Timuquana was all those months of renovations. They're doing a no guest policy. So we're not able to go out and redo what we had planned because I'd be a guest. And Jim, as like the class act he is, he actually emailed me to tell me that because he didn't want to feel like, he said, I don't want you to think I'm just blowing you off, but I'm also not going to ask for preferential treatment at the club for sure. So 4 months ago, I would have been like, shit, I had this video planned for this day. Now I got to find something else to do in this limited time I have and it's just like, that's okay. We'll figure it out.
Right.
And then, but ironically enough, Jude started daycare 3 weeks ago, and I planned the month of September. I learned a lot from my break, and it's like, I'm going to plan some efficiency. I went away for 3 days and I filmed with 3 channels. So it's like, I made quality stuff that's going to do good for everyone involved, but it's also 3 weeks of uploading over the course of 3 days.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a lot in those 2 weeks, but then he's just not adjusting to daycare. And these days that I was away, I'm watching him and it's breaking my heart. I'm watching him on the video, and he's scared, he's lonely, he's chasing the teacher around, and sure, he has fun here and there, but he's not napping, he's getting sick. And I'm literally in the car wherever I was driving, I'm watching him, and it's breaking my heart. Like, I'm holding back tears. And I said to Kelly, I'm like, we're pulling him out. We're not doing this. We can't do this. It's really expensive. And B, I'm like, from what I've learned from the break, from the time before the break, with having some help, I can figure out what to do.
I mean, you will figure it out, because this is like, before I started the Company of Dads, I was New York Times columnist for 13 years. Almost that entire time I was the lead dad, and particularly since 2013, when my wife started her own company, I realized that, okay, I can't be as loosey-goosey as I used to be. If somebody says, hey, do you want to go to lunch here or drink here? I was like, no. And I literally had a schedule, Andrew, where Monday, Tuesday, I would be on the phone talking to people, around my kids' schedule, so I could pop out.
Yeah.
Wednesday, I would write, but sometimes I have to write at night. Thursday, my dad would come down. So I'd go in the city on Thursday. And that was a day when I could meet 6, 7, 8 people on Thursday, and then I'd come home. And it worked after years, because people said, okay, well, if we want to, sit down, talk to Paul Sullivan, XYZ at the New York Times, Thursday's the day. But those Thursdays were planned out 3 months in advance.
Yeah,
but that's like the key to being a lead dad. It's not you have a more flexible schedule. It's that you have a more rigid schedule. And you have to make it like super rigid and like, okay, and then I'm going to be efficient here.
But I think I'm lucky in that sense, because what my dad taught me, what I watched my dad do, especially a military father at a military golf club, no less, I know how to plan my time. Like, I've always been like that. And if you're a professional golfer, and even my years of playing, I didn't have a great career. If you don't really know what you're doing any given day, you're never going to make it to the PGA Tour. If you're just like, I'm going to go to the course today and just kind of, no, you need to have a plan. You need to know you just have to, you look at all the stuff that's come out over the years of what Tiger days were like there was no stone left unturned, no minute wasted. And it's the same thing. So I've taken these things that I've learned, and now this thing that I held on to so tightly, just like when I played, it was PGA Tour or bust. And I put myself in debt. I did all these harmful things to myself and my future by just pursuing this dream with such blinders and such arrogance and such a tunnel vision, that to the detriment of so many things, and almost the detriment of my life and my family's life. The ripple effects of me dying, of any suicide, last forever, and they affect so many people. And I've been like that with YouTube too. I've always wanted to tell stories, and that's just not working on golf YouTube. And this time I spent 3 days on the road, driving and playing and filming videos. I don't love to film, but they're necessary right now. And then this decision I've made with Jude, it's like, I don't fucking care anymore. I take it back to, so when I worked at Lululemon in my off seasons, Chip Wilson, who founded Lululemon, unbelievable entrepreneur, businessman. He's not that he's moved on, but one of the things he always said, he was like, Lululemon was his way, because he did a lot of good. Lululemon allowed him to do a lot of charitable work and do a lot of good. And he said, if push comes to shove and I have to sell refrigerators to continue Lululemon going so I can keep doing what I'm able to do for my family and my charity and all these things, then I'm selling refrigerators. And that like kind of line from 2009 lives in my head, because I'm saying it's not like it's my integrity is compromised, but if I have to make product review videos, if I have to just make instruction practice videos, that's what I'll fucking do. Right. Like I don't, at this point, it's like, if I'm able to continue to do this as a job, which gives me the flexibility to be around for my son until he's 2 years old or whatever, then I'll do it.
Right.
And it's so funny.
And you'll learn something else from doing it. You'll learn so much from doing it. And then you have this different experience and it'll take you in a different direction. Yeah. We just can't do the same things when we have kids that we did before we had kids.
And I've had some opportunities literally present themselves in the last week that will keep me doing this, but allow me more time at home, travel less, film less. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So it means if I'm stepping into a role at a business that's still in this creative space and it's helping golfers, it's helping creators, it's using my expertise, my years of experience playing and creating, but I'm able to do it from home, travel less. I miss the travel. I always hate saying travel less because I loved it. I lived on the road. I'm used to travel. I really enjoy it. You go to great
places. I mean, golf courses are nice places, you know, and you go.
Yeah, like even last week, kind of just bouncing around South Carolina and Georgia and having a shit hotel one night and a good hotel and just walking down to, oh, where's this place I can have? I like that. Like a professional golfer is kind of a lone wolf. Mm-hmm. I miss that and I like that. But if that means I do that once every few months, that's okay. But I've learned this efficiency to, it's like, if I'm going to go, let's say to Dallas and film with a few channels over 2-3 days, that gives me a month of content. Perfect. So when I come home, my only concern now is just editing when I have the time to edit, basically and I'm not going, I think, the direction of videos that's going to require, I still want to be a really good golfer. I still like practicing, but if I'm like, when we played golf, that was like, I was lucky. Like, it was just, I haven't golfed or practiced in a while and I played great because I didn't give a shit. Now you start practicing, my game sucks because the week after that I practiced 5 days a week. And it's like, because now I know what I'm doing wrong as opposed to just kind of blindly going. So if the direction I would go video wise would not be as much about me performing because I won't have the time to practice. The sacrifice would be that practice time potentially indoors is filming time indoors. Cool. So that I don't have the performance stuff to film, whatever.
What's the dad scene like where you are? You live in a place called Nocatee, which is one of the most famous, fast-growing communities in America. But what's the dad scene
like?
The
number one community in Florida 3 years in a row. Like, this place is it. It's interesting because it's a wealthy enough area, St. Johns County. There's a lot of moms, a lot of single moms. And we lived just outside of Nocatee when we first had Jude before we moved here. And I would come to a coffee shop here where there's a little splash pad and have a coffee and bring Jude out. And I met this group, this mom group, and they added me to the Facebook. And there was 2 dads. I was the second dad in it, 200 and some members in it. I'm watching, it's all these full-time moms. Like, but Jude was an age. So then one of the times, the Friday's coffee at this place, and I go one time and I cried. I sat there on the bench and I cried because I get there and it's like Jude is awake, but a lot of the ones older than him are going down for that 12 o'clock nap. I get there at 11:30 because Jude has woken up from the 9:30 nap when he was 6 months old. And I remember I kind of put him down in the grass and he's looking around because he's always been so observant. Fuck, man, it's so weird how like some things hit you as a parent now. Like some things just get you. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching him just like look at everything. And I'm sitting on this bench with my coffee and there's a group of 5 moms there, 6 moms there, 3 there, different ages, kids running around. And I'm like, and I texted Kelly. I'm like, this fucking sucks. No one's talking to me and no one's talking to Jude. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this is brutal. And then I joined a stay-at-home dad group here in Florida. And all it is once the guy posts once someone joins. It's like stay-at-home dads were this weird. And then I'd see posts that were from the wives saying, my husband's really depressed. Can any guy help me? But then I also noticed like this it's like you're an island on yourself because there's this misconception or potential stigma like, oh, is that a single dad? Is he going to be out here hitting on us? Or
Mm,
even at the pool, when I bring Jude to the pool, sometimes he walks up to any brunette because he thinks it's his mom.
right.
And sometimes it's cute. I'm lucky Jude's very, very cute. Like sometimes it's cute, but then I've had these experiences where it's just kind of like a cold shoulder. And it's like, no, I'm not using my child to hit on you.
He's not
You
a
look like
puppy.
his,
He's not a
you
puppy. He's
look
a
like
small
his
child.
mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, I've been lucky though, because one of my buddies who plays on tour just lost his tour card. So he's full Corn Ferry next year. And he moved here the week we moved here. He moved from Sawgrass to here.
Mm-hmm.
We've been going, and their son's 3. We literally go to the park every morning. We hit a park run because I'll take Jude to 4 parks in the morning, swing here, slide there, just to keep it exciting and different. Yeah. And I have met other dads. Ryan Lavner from the Golf Channel, met him down here, and like we've become really good friends. So you're meeting other dads, but there's very few that are in my situation where they're like the primary caregiver, if you will. I meet nannies, and it's kind of like, and it's moms or grandmothers, and it's just like, it's even today when we joined the YMCA because they have a kids zone. It's like, great, maybe Jude will kind of go for a workout, and Jude will kind of get comfortable, like kind of. Even when I put him in there for a minute after signing up, he's screaming because he thinks it's daycare. But it's just a sea of moms dropping the kids off, and you're talking to them because the kids are the same age. But it's not the same, because even this mom group I'm friends with on Facebook, it's mom's night out, this and that.
Right.
Like, we're going to do a wine night. And it's like, I'm not allowed to go to that. I wouldn't want to, but I'm not invited. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't necessarily want to go and spend an evening with 8 moms because I don't think that's respectful. There's just a lot of murky area, or if I'm communicating and texting with the wives to spend time with I just don't think that's appropriate. I think that can be a slippery slope, and I just don't want to even open that door. But yeah, it's interesting because as a lead dad, as a stay-at-home dad, you're an island to yourself, because also you meet dads. What do you do? I'm with them all the time, and it's like, oh, it's a bit confusing. Luckily, I'm meeting people in the golf space that I've met people that watch my channel, and they're like, that's so fucking cool. You know what I mean? I still don't feel like, even when we think we did swimming lessons with Jude, I didn't really connect. But Kelly and I would go to both of them, but you don't connect with the parents. A lot of it is the kids just splash around. You don't even know the parents' names. Yeah. Because it's just like you're splashing around the kids 45 minutes. So it's interesting. It's like this, seems to me it's like a huge area of opportunity, if you want, but that comes down to stigma, misconception, all of these things. But at the same token, there's one dad that is a dickhead, and using that it ruins it for
everybody. Yeah,
exactly. So I can't necessarily fault it, but it's hit me in my feels a couple of times, because me being ignored and neglected, I don't care. I'm 38 years old now. I'm super comfortable. I don't care if these moms don't want to chat with me, but if it means my son,
or your son,
doesn't have the potential for a play day or a kid to sit and push a ball, so your thought, preconceived notion, misconception towards me is affecting my kid, and that hurts. That's the thing that hurts.
Andrew, this has been great. Thank you for being my guest today.
No, thanks for having me. We could talk about this forever.
One last question, quick answer, news you can use answer, because you're so open. If their dads listen to this and they're having, mental health struggles, what one piece of advice would you give to them?
I just think you need to know it's like, you're not alone. That's the problem with depression, with anxiety, with these things. They isolate you emotionally from everyone else, because you begin to think this is only on me, no one would care. And then that thought is very much isolating. I don't want to share. I don't want to burden someone with this. I don't have someone to burden with this. But just to walk, knowing that you are not alone, that there is literally someone else who has experienced this exact thing. It may manifest a little bit differently. It's powerful, because that's one thing that men don't do. But when we do it, it's very powerful when we do talk about things, whether it's feeling isolated because of what it is, like the pressure of being a dad all the time, or the grief of something, or a marriage thing. Like, there's other men that will happily talk about it with you. There just needs to be that someone needs to break the ice.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that my past is public. So I have a lot of people that lay it on me, which gets heavy to me sometimes because I become an amateur therapist. But if it helps healing, if it helps progress, it's worth it. It's totally worth it, because it's also a safe enough space where you could say to that dude that's opening up to you, like, well, this is getting hard on me now. Like, you've created a dialogue. It's not just a one-way thing. So it's super, super cliched. You are not alone. It's the same thing I tell a 14-year-old. Mm-hmm. Because when I was 14, I thought I was the only one in my school who hated himself, who looked in the mirror and wanted to die. You know what I mean? I thought I was the only one like that, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
By no stretch was I. And they're cliches for reasons, basically.
Andrew, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.